Welcome to Grad Guidance, career tips and tools for graduate students. I'm your host, Allie Irk, Associate Director of Graduate Student Career Development at Lehigh University. In this episode, we'll be discussing effective practices for teaching assistants, featuring Jason Slipp, Senior Instructional Designer and Technologist in the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning, and a PhD student in the College of Education in the Teaching, Learning, and Technology program. Welcome to Grad Guidance. I'm Allie Irk. Our guest today is Jason Slipp. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Allie, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So glad that you're taking time to talk about effective teaching practices today. I think it's a really important topic. And before we dive into the topic, I want to see if you could tell us a little bit more about your background and your current role.
Yeah, for sure. So I was a first generation college student, and I had a very romantic vision of becoming a high school counselor. So I had a psychology degree, and probably about 3/4 of the way through, I found out that psychology wasn't really for me. But I finished up with a psychology degree because I was almost done. But luckily, my advisor had a current student finishing up her PhD was working at a local company doing training and development, which is part of the industrial organizational psychology field. So I got kind of swept up into the what IO field and did an internship that turned into a full-time job. And then, the counseling psychology was still calling me. So I applied to graduate school, and I got into a program in Philadelphia at Chestnut Hill College to do a graduate degree in counseling psychology. And I think it was my third or fourth class, and I couldn't do it. It was an all-day class. I was in the library, and I think I had a breakdown, like a learning nervous breakdown, where this isn't really where I wanted my life to be. And I went to the grad office actually, and met this fantastic, amazing person, Sister Mary Louise, and she talked to me about her instructional design program, and thought that I had really similar skills that would fit really well. So I reapplied to Chestnut Hill for that program, and got in, and totally changed my life. I was a pretty solid C student throughout my career, and I thought it was always me that was the problem. And it turns out that it wasn't always me. I'm highly motivated, intrinsically motivated to learn, but it was based in constructivist theory. And I learned about learning design, deep learning design, motivation, a lot of adult learning theory. And it really changed my entire view on learning, teaching and learning. And after graduate school, I applied to a few places, and Lehigh was one of the places that wanted to hire me for an instructional designer technology position. And that was 2003, and I've been at Lehigh ever since. So it's been a while.
Yeah, well, we're so glad that you are part of the staff here at Lehigh, and also, being a graduate student here as well. I think it's fabulous. You have so much great insights to share. I also love that you touched on the fact of changing career paths or interests along the way, which is really common, right? As we continue to go along, we find out, new things that we could invest our time in and explore. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was hard for me, because I think we're all molded into, stay on this path. And it was a hard decision, and but the right one.
Yeah, so true. So many of our talented graduate students function as teaching assistants. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what do you see as some important qualities to be successful in that role?
Yeah, Allie, that's a great question. And I think for me, they're all high order skills that really the most successful graduate students have. And that is empathy, communication skills. I know some of these just sound totally trite, and everyone says, yeah, everyone needs to be able to communicate, but it's true. Being able to communicate, having compassion for your students, and having really great listening skills. And I know that every TA is in a different situation. They might just be grading papers or grading assignments or projects to actually teaching the class. And I just think that those high level order skills are so important when you're teaching, because you're going to create more of a connection to the students, and then they're going to open up to you, and they're going to come to you if they have questions or problems or issues, and that's just going to create a much better learning environment for everyone. rather than continuing just to sort of lecture out at these students. So you're creating a learner-centered environment. What's really unique, I think, about TAs is they're also students, right? Just like you said. So I think reflection is another important component of their experiences, and being able to reflect and say, well, what were the components that I had trouble with, in this class, or in my teaching, in my learning experience, and how can I change that for these students? And I've had many conversations about TAs. Some of them got into being a TA because they wanted to change that particular class, and luckily they've worked with faculty who are open to that. So that's been really interesting.
Yeah, those are excellent points about all of the different skills. I think the skills that you highlighted are really essential for all workplaces as you build relationships with your colleagues, and a lot of projects, you're working together as part of a team. So I'm really glad you highlighted all of those.
Yeah, and sorry, one more thing I'll add too is I think a thing that our culture, it is a cultural thing, and of course it's very prevalent in higher ed, is the thing that you roll out is the final product, and whatever that is, that could be your lecture that day, that could be the exam that you give, that could be the assignment, and that could be the assignments that students are giving back, right? It's the high stakes environment, and I think that that's really detrimental to teaching and learning, and embracing more of a continuous improvement and sort of fail forward, if you will, is a much better kind of way to kind of handle teaching and learning. And I know time constraints, and I know there's other constraints around being a TA, but if you can kind of figure out how to maybe do some continuous improvement and not feel like that one high stakes thing didn't work out, so it was a failure, tinker with it, do some iterations and make it better over time. I think that's an important skill as well. And across workplaces, when you said across workplaces, it reminded me of that skill.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I absolutely agree. I think too, it's modeling that skill in the classroom is so valuable for students. So not just being, part of that experience, but actually getting to see it unfold and see someone else kind of navigate through. I think it's important.
Absolutely.
So that leads into the next question is, for graduate students who are just going to be beginning a new role as a TA, how can they prepare for that new role?
Well, they can come to the teacher development series as a good plug for it. No, I think it is a very unique series. It's a very unique collaboration between the Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning and the Grad Life Office. So that is certainly one way that they can that they can prepare. And we'll talk a little bit more about the series later on. The other thing is I'll go back to reflection. I think it's really important to reflect on what was a meaningful learning experience to the TA, and what they, how they want to make it meaningful for their students. And that could be a million different ways, whether it's we're getting into sort of universal design for learning principles, but if you talk about expression and in different ways to submit assessments, right, instead of maybe a high stakes multiple choice exam that some people struggle on, especially cross-culturally, maybe you allow the students to submit a variety of assessments, whether it could be a project or a multimodal project with some video or some other things infused in it, or maybe it is just a video rather than a paper. So just reflect on sort of what the meaningful learning experiences were to you and how you can pass that along to your students, I think would be a really good first step into preparing. Also, clearly you're a TA in that particular class because you have subject matter expertise, and you are the subject matter expert to those students. So the other thing I will say too is, though, it's a hard line to walk when you're a peer, when you're almost a peer to these students, but trying to figure out and trying to utilize the peer-to-peer relationship and the mentor and mentee relationship, trying to figure out how that could work best in a classroom, and how you want to kind of design your classroom to again make it learner centered. So focus on learner centered, not on just here's a bunch of information, then you're going to tell me this stuff back. I'm going to make this a very sort of engaging environment.
Yeah, those are great tips. I like the part about reflecting on your own experience. I think that's powerful. That can be integrated then into how you go forward in the delivery of your own information. I think that's really important. So even thinking about the graduate students who may have been a TA already, how can they go forward to kind of maximize their effectiveness to best support students? What are some maybe strategies for them?
That is a great question, Allie. and this is hard. This is difficult, right? Because again, there's a lot of dynamics going on in the relationship, right? So students come in, especially undergraduate students come in, they're used to being the recipients of the knowledge, right? And then they're used to then pushing that knowledge back to the faculty member. And so there's a power dynamic, essentially what I'm trying to say is there's a power dynamic there. And I think for TAs, if you can figure out how to lessen that power dynamic, if we kind of use a sort of analogy of a ladder, right? Like you're not on different rungs, you're on the same rungs pretty much, or we're climbing up the same ladder to get two different ladders together at the same time. And if you're down, I'm going to help you up a little bit more, and trying to figure out how to make that dynamic just a little bit more equal, right? Or equal altogether. That would go a long way, I think. And then in addition, realizing when students are struggling, because I think what especially at elite institutions, students will not normally admit or accept that they're struggling. It's really difficult for them. It's a difficult conversation to have. And if you can, if you're seeing in their pathways and their learning pathways that they're struggling, reach out to them. And I know that's easier said than done in a large lecture class where you have 300 students and you're just, you're behind the 8 ball trying to get things done. But if you can figure out a way to sort of reach out to students and pull them along and lift them and use their peers to help pull them along too, I think that will go a far way in making the learning environment that much more engaging for everyone.
Yeah, I love the student-centered approach of really focusing on the student. And I do think TAs have a tremendous influence to be able to not just be an example and to share knowledge, but also, as you kind of mentioned, they can be a point of connection for students to all the resources on campus. Right? We're very fortunate how many different resources we have here at Lehigh, which I really appreciate. So I think that's another kind of way that they can be supportive of, suggesting different resources and helping them to be able to access those.
I agree. I agree. I went to a very small state school, so I actually never had a TA. it was kind of even in my largest lecture class, which was like 45 people, I never had a TA. But the more successful ones I've seen are the ones that are able to balance the relationship between their students, both as a peer, but also as a mentor. And I know that's very hard. Then we get into sort of leadership skills and those kind of things. But going back to the higher order skills, showing empathy, showing being supportive, compassion, I think will go a really long way, rather than you didn't do well, sorry. That's that those are again easier said than done in everyone's life.
Yeah, I think that's why it's a team approach. So I really appreciate all the wonderful faculty we have and what an amazing, programs that we have where, everyone can collaborate together and work together.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you had mentioned a little bit, and I want to hear more about some of the resources that students can tap into. Really want to hear more about the teacher development series and how students can access that and learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm happy to talk about it. So I'm lucky because I inherited this program that was already pretty much chugging along. It was already really well designed. So my job was just not to mess it up. so I inherited it from Greg Ryman, who is our our vice provost in LTS now. And when he was the director of the CITL, he combined forces with the Graduate Life Office and Kathleen Hutnick and created this really great series. And it met a need. It filled a gap, which was, we are training you. You're going to be researchers and or teachers, someday. But yet, there's no required class to really learn about teaching learning theory. So we're going to fill this gap, and I think it's really well designed in terms of the students get a credential for it. It's something they're proud of it. I've been, one of my proudest moments was I got tagged on LinkedIn from a former student who posted her certificate, which was so awesome. So it's out there. It's well received, I think, throughout the grad students. And that series is interesting because it really took a lot of the work we were already doing in the CITL. We have tons of documentation. We do individual consultations. We do seminars. We do workshops. We do trainings, right? But it really took all that work and it packaged it into a series of here is how you can become a better, here's how you can learn about teaching and learning. And here's some lockstep ways to do so. And it goes everywhere from really deep dive into learning design to using writing as a tool for learning. I did a great DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion session last semester with Jasmine Woodson and Carrie Baldwin, two librarians within LTS. So it really runs the gamut of skills, and the world is changing, right? This last year, the world changed very, very quickly. And I think that's the fun part of the teacher development series, is keeping up on what is new and what we should have already been doing, and then how can we prepare these TAs to be either in front of the classroom or like I said, more if they're just a lot very highly technical, very grading or those kind of resources. So we do go over our tools. We have flagship tools, educational technology tools at Lehigh, such as Moodle and Zoom and Panopto. And so we do go over those tools as well. So it's very theoretical and conceptual, but it's also very applicable. And we're not much different than many other schools. So if once they go off and go somewhere else, these skills I think are transferable to these other programs or other places they'll go. And obviously being online for the last year has been a challenge. I've been remote, but the first semester was a bit rough because we had a fall semester of it being face-to-face, and then we had a spring 2020 of it being remote. So that was a little rough, but I think we've re-centered, and now it's going to actually be interesting to go back face-to-face because I think we're kind of in a good system here in remote. But they're every other week during the semester for 6 weeks. So it spans the entire semester, and the students are amazing. They're engaged. They ask questions, very good questions. A lot of times I have to say, I have to get back to you about that. I don't know the answer to that question. But they're very well prepared, and they're dealing with things already. Some of them who are already TAs are already dealing with things. How do I make my classroom more inclusive? How do I talk about difficult problems? We had a session on talking about having difficult conversations, right? How do we do that? So it is a pretty awesome program, and I'm very lucky to have inherited it and continue the process along.
Sounds like an absolutely amazing program. I'm so glad that our students have that opportunity to participate. And I agree that it's highly transferable skills. And so it's not just going to benefit in this immediate time of your role as a TA, but also continuing on as you go forward in your discipline. So I think that's wonderful. So you had mentioned that students, it's open to all graduate students. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And how can students sign up for that typically? Will it be promoted around the times that it's happening in the fall and the spring?
That's correct. The Grad Life office does a great job at promoting it. Amy does an awesome job, both flyers. You'll see flyers around when we're back on campus. You'll see flyers around campus. I'm also a graduate student, as you mentioned, Allie. And so, we get emails and they're beautifully formatted emails about the teacher development series and how to sign up. And it is, we do require that you go to each session. And if you can't go to a session, you just have to let me know. And if you miss, I think you can miss up to 1 or 2. And we just ask you to watch the recording, because even in the classroom, even face-to-face, we record the sessions. So we ask you to watch the recording and to write something up for us so that we know that you've, rightfully consumed the content and have, can think about the stuff critically and apply it. So it is a well-oiled machine from that perspective, from sort of the registration perspective. We have upwards of, I think, about 45 or 50 students register each semester. TAs register each semester. And the way that it's been designed, it's kind of modular in a way. So if you sign up in the spring, it's okay, because you're gonna, you don't need to sign up in the fall. You can sign up in the spring if you want, and then when we get around to the fall, you'll get all new information as well. And it doesn't matter for folks who sign up in the fall, and then we'll go into the spring. So I kind of have this modular approach to it, where you're getting the same arc of information, but it's, it's over different times. And So I think it's flexible, it's well oiled, it's really it really is a wonderful program.
It sounds so valuable. I also love that students are doing this as part of a cohort. I think there's, great opportunity within that to be with peers from multiple programs and to come together and be able to talk and discuss these important topics.
You're really right. Getting out of your bubble in anything you're doing. Even in our team, when I get out of my bubble and I talk to you, right, we learn so much, and getting out of your bubble and hearing from students and other programs that you didn't even really know maybe existed. And you learn perspectives, and you learn how they're doing things, or how that, and they're going to get way more valuable information. To be honest with you, they'll get way more valuable information from that than they will from me, right? And like that's really where the magic happens. And if I have one thing that I would love to do with the program is making it more peer centric, so that, and giving them an opportunity outside the classroom to collaborate and to create a community of inquiry, which is what we should be doing. So that's my holy grail for the program. I'll work on that next year.
I love it. Well, I encourage all grad students to check it out because it's an amazing opportunity to enhance your skills, to network with your peers, to learn more about resources and strategies. So I encourage everyone to do that. And I love that you pointed out even students promoting their participation on LinkedIn. So what a fabulous addition to your resume, your CV, your LinkedIn profile to be a part of this program, to be able to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Excellent. So based on your work in providing training for TAs, do you have any final words of advice or insights that you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say everything that we do, everything we design is backed and steeped in research, right? We don't do anything because we think it's cool or neat or new. Everything is steeped in research, and we do everything from a learner perspective, from a learner-centered perspective. There are a couple books that have been influential to me recently. The End of Average by Todd Rose is a really amazing read. And in fact, this summer, and another amazing read is Range by David Epstein, which I'm actually teaching a class this summer in the College of Ed on range. Those two books have been really influential on me, sort of rethinking my idea of learning and how learning takes place, and what the academy looks like, and how we can. How learning is really not just happening in the classroom; it's happening everywhere, at any moment. So I would say if you come across something, try, and it sounds of interest, implement it. Try it out if you have that freedom, as a TA, implement it. The other thing I will say is, one thing I forgot to mention is our workshops and everything, they're open to all faculty, students, and staff. It's very rare that we have a workshop that is only for one population. We always open it up to everyone. And so if there is something that you're missing or something that you want more information on, check out the CITL events page during the semesters. We have tons of stuff going on. And then in addition, we're not just faculty development, right? We meet with students, and we meet with TAs, and we meet with grad students, we meet with staff members. So we will support. If you have a question, send us an email or a ticket, and one of us will get back to you and help you out. And, you're not alone, for sure. So a lot of support.
Yeah, amazing support. I appreciate all of those recommendations for the book recommendations and the CITL workshops. It's fabulous. I think there's so many opportunities to keep developing as a professional. I actually took part in some of those workshops when we pivoted to working remotely, and I did find them extremely helpful. So I appreciate all the work that you do.
Yeah,
thank you
great.
so much.
Likewise. Likewise.
So thank you so much for taking time to share about, effective teaching practices and all of the resources that you talked about. I really think it's important for graduate students to be aware of and take advantage of all of these resources while they're here at Lehigh. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ali. I really appreciate it.
Tune in next time to Grad Guidance, and we're talking about different topics and resources that you can tap into as a student here at Lehigh. Take care. Here are effective strategies for teaching assistants. Show empathy and compassion. Utilize active listening skills. Reflect on your own experience as a student. Embrace a continuous improvement model. Consider learning styles and multiple teaching approaches. Recognize if students are struggling to connect them to campus resources. Lessen the power dynamic and build a strong working relationship. Engage in professional development, including the Teacher Development Series and CITL workshops. Check out the Teacher Development Series. This 6-part series is offered each fall and spring. It is open to current graduate students from all colleges. You can earn a Level 1 or Level 2 certificate to add to your portfolio. Visit the link below for more information.